Eek!
Chris involuntarily let out a voice. The fear was so overwhelming that it felt like the heart was about to leap out of his mouth. When Chris cautiously turned around, there stood Miss Tagawa.
Wimura-kun, what are you doing?
Shush!
Despite the fact that she was a teacher, Chris cautioned her to be quiet. Then, he turned off the switch of the flashlight that she was holding. Miss Tagawa, looking taken aback, lowered her chin and fell silent. Chris was worried that the people inside the warehouse might have noticed them, so he peeked into the hole again. However, the three of them remained completely still in the same position. Chris let out a sigh of relief. Then, he gestured for the teacher to take a look as well. Without voicing it, she mouthed, "What?" and looking puzzled, crouched down to peek into the hole. Unable to hide her surprise, she covered her mouth with hand. The large eyes widened even further, and with the other hand, she grabbed Chris's arm. It was quite a strong grip. Noticing Chris grimacing in pain, she let go of her hand. However, she was completely paralyzed by fear. Wondering if it was really that scary, Chris changed his position and peered into the hole once more. Then, an unbelievable sight appeared before his eyes. There, an unknown monster had emerged. The creature, with a gorilla-like upper body covered in black fur, spread large bat-like wings on its back. Had a wolf-like head with saber-toothed tiger fangs bared, and twisted its long, snake-like body while soaring above the three people. A strong, intense smell like rotten meat pierced his nose, and Chris instinctively covered his nose and mouth with his hands. He had seen various legendary creatures in the underground and underwater worlds, but this one clearly had a different atmosphere. It was a creature of the kind associated with demons or something similar. Woof, woof. Perhaps excited by the presence of the monster, Bibi suddenly started barking from the other side of the warehouse.
Bibi, quiet, don't bark.
Chris shouted telepathically. However, it was already too late. The monster that reacted to Bibi's barking twisted its large body and looked back. Bibi continues to bark, ignoring Chris's command. Of the three people in white robes who stood up, the two on the sides began to move the vaulting horse that was blocking the exit.
Bibi, come over here.
Perhaps Chris's voice reached him, as Bibi's barking finally stopped. The last girl remaining began to chant again, holding a cross-shaped dagger up to the monster. Then, a purple beam of light shot out from the cross like an electric current, enveloping the monster. The movement of the monster that turned to face the girl was sealed by that.
Amazing.
Chris couldn't help but be impressed by the girl controlling the large monster. However, that thought was short-lived as the monster raised its arms with a clanking motion, like a rusty tin robot. And then, it swung its arm down with great force. In the next moment, the girl was blown away and disappeared from Chris's sight. Instead, what caught Chris's eye was the sight of another girl lying on the ground beneath the monster. A pale, petite girl wearing a uniform lay in the center of a symbol drawn in lime on the darkened floor. It was Sana. The monster seemed to be contemplating eating Sana, as it looked down at her with its long tongue hanging out. The two who were moving the vaulting horse seemed to have been frightened by the sight of the girl being blown away, desperately trying to escape. Without caring about the two of them, the monster tried to pounce on Sana.
Stop it!
Chris shouted loudly. The monster that tried to pounce on Sana stopped just in time and turned to look at Chris. In the meantime, the two in white garments dashed out through the door on the opposite side. Woof woof woof! Bibi barked at Chris's feet. Ignoring the two who had escaped, the monster approached Chris. Chris pushed the teacher aside and, tripping over a chair, desperately made his way to the front. Bibi ran after him from behind. Chris kicked the iron door, which had been left open, with all his might. Bang! At the same time Chris kicked the door, an explosion echoed from the other side. And the back of the warehouse had been blown away along with the door. It seems that a monster has smashed it to pieces. The figure of Miss Tagawa, who should have been there, was nowhere to be seen. The monster that noticed Chris twisted its body like a snake, turned around, and lunged at him with its arms wide open.
Ondo Valna Ashim.
Chris thrust his right arm up towards the charging monster. The light dragon, with its mouth wide open as if roaring, was unleashed from Miracorn. The charging monster crossed its arms in front of its face to block the attack. However, the shining dragon swallowed the monster whole and flew away into the sky through the opposite door. Chris breathed heavily as he stared at his right arm. He was completely absorbed, but he was able to demonstrate the results of his training in practice like this. However, Chris never imagined that he would face such a situation in this surface world.